The Underground, Ideas into Action presents an Underground Chat, where we bring the underground conversation to you. Today's chat, Thriving versus Surviving, with Rico Delgadillo, President and CEO of Balance.
It's great to see you, Rico. I'm so excited to chat. How are you and your family doing, and your credit union family and the Balance family at this time in history?
Well, first and foremost, Sue, thank you so much for inviting us and taking the time to do this interview with us. We're very honored. Balance has been a huge supporter of the underground movement, and we really appreciate this opportunity. You know, any other place and time you get asked that question, how are you doing? It's a very simplistic answer. Most people, I think we end up falling into that perfunctory response. I'm doing well, and you just move on. But in today's time and climate, it's a heavier question, and I think it's one that we should take a moment to pause and really reflect on how we're doing, because I think it's really important to understand what we're all going through, and everyone is experiencing it differently. Not everyone is experiencing 2020 in the same way, and it's just been, you know, I have to pause for a second and say that even if I was to share my own personal story, it's going to sound very familiar with what a lot of families are going through. We're all adjusting to sheltering in place. You're now getting used to having more people at home, where in the past you didn't have that. And I think that when we all think about this, we have to really go out of our way and search for positive, any kind of positivity. Because if we don't, we're gonna dwell on the negative, and that's easier said than done. But we really have to make a concerted effort and stop and think and say, okay, well, we're sheltering in place. So what are we doing here? So you take advantage, and hopefully it's teaching you to spend more time with your kids. It's helping you spend more time with your significant other. As I say to my friends, you know, we will definitely practice safe physical distancing, but the last thing we're going to do is practice social distancing, because now more than ever, we need to reach out to each other. This is the time where you don't go months on end without reaching out to a friend, whether you do it via LinkedIn, whether you're sending a text, whether you're sending an email. I think we probably have had more Zoom calls with friends and family than we did any other time. So it's just, you have to try to embrace it and know that we will come out of it. We're going to come out of it stronger. But more importantly, let's not forget what we've gone through. So it allows us an opportunity where whatever that looks like on the other side, to be able to take a deep breath and say, we got through this together. And I think that's probably the most important message I try to say to everyone. We've attempted, and we've tried our very best not to overburden everyone with meetings, but we try having Zoom meetings. We want to check in with one another, because it's so important for me to make sure that everyone is doing well. I think that, you know, we throw titles around, right? But during these times, I mean, certainly my grandson could care less if I'm a CEO or what my title is. When he needs his grandfather, he needs him here and now. When I have to take care of my mom, there is no such thing as, well, I have a meeting that's coming up. If I get a call from my 82-year-old mother and she's telling me that she's short on groceries or things need to happen, those are things that we have to immediately react to. But what's really important is that we have to understand that all of us are going through this. So we have to be sensitive when we get the requests from each other. And Sue, I think that's, to me, that's the most important part, is that we have to take a moment, we have to take a deep breath and understand that we're all going through this together. And I think we need to practice and be more aware of it, so we're more patient and we're kinder to each other.
I agree 100%. I also think that as we go through this, the lessons we're learning are lifelong lessons. And I know you just mentioned your grandchildren, your children, your parents. There's such a multi-generational lesson that we're all learning together during this time. Before we go into the big picture, you and I and most of our audience are blessed because we're part of the credit union movement, which so our life work is also committed to what you just spoke to. Would you tell us a little bit about balance and what you do, the big picture, so that we can put it in context as we start to talk about the impact you're having?
Absolutely. So balance, we are, it's amazing to think sometimes. So we actually were established in 1969. So balance has been around for a little over 50 years. We've been providing, so we just recently last year celebrated our 50th year anniversary. We are a HUD approved national intermediary. And our goal and our mission is improving the financial health of all the consumers and members that reach out to us. So to me, it's what's so amazing for me is that I've been in this industry going on 28 years, and it's a job and it's a passion that I've had, and I've really loved the work that we do. And now with my role, I have the opportunity to lead an agency of professionals that thrive. They really, really thrive. They wake up every single morning knowing that they have the ability to impact somebody's life in a positive way. And that happens every single day. So the counselors and our coaches that are out in the front lines, they're receiving calls from credit union members that they're scared. Some of them are feeling hopeless. They don't understand. They're trying to figure out how to pay their bills. What's going to happen if they lose a job? What's going to happen if they have fallen behind in rent? What do they do with their mortgage? So you have these phenomenal, amazing counselors that they themselves are going through the same exact thing from the individuals that are calling in, but they have the ability and the knack to actually put that to the side and give it their all to the individuals that they're talking to. And to me, that's probably the most amazing thing, Sue, that when we talk about balance as a whole and what we do, yes, we cover financial management and credit card debt repayment and pre-purchase and post-purchase, and we help people avoid foreclosure. But beyond that, we're really impacting individuals and families every single day, and hopefully in a positive way. We like to look at it as when you're scared and you don't know what to do, you're reaching out to someone that actually and sincerely is listening to you and is caring about the questions that you have and how to navigate through these times. And I got to tell you, Sue, one of the things that I love is our managers share some of the success stories from clients that reach back to us. And when you listen to those stories and when you hear it from the individual credit union members' mouths, it's moving. It's really touching to hear the impact that we're having. So that's in a nutshell what Balance is doing and what we're going to continue to do into the future.
Well, you've talked about what you guys do, and you just made a very important point when it comes to your counselors and your people being able to work with people, whatever their life situation is. And I just want to follow up on that a little bit, because you also said they have to set aside their own situations, and I find that so moving. It's very touching, and from an empathy standpoint, being able to be vulnerable and to identify with people. And when you look at your own journey, I just want to emphasize that not only have you led this organization and been part of a partnership with credit unions to provide counseling for credit union members across the country, you've also have a passion for it because you can see that it makes a difference, that people get financial guidance, they get financial support. I was telling a group this week that Balance is available to be able to help people even start the process, Rico. People are so concerned right now, and the stimulus checks and the things that they've had available to them are sitting in maybe at home in cash. But we think of it financial wellness, or we think about financial health, meaning that we're sick. And sometimes it's also about, how do I get started? How do I get the routine? So I just wanted to see if you had any comments on that.
It's overwhelming. Everybody always thinks that there's this long formal process, and I don't want to oversimplify the step, but it's really as easy as just reaching out. It's just a phone call. You have to start, and I think that really is the secret sauce to our organization. I think it's really the counselors and the coaches that are committed, because what you're doing is you're really reaching out to someone that's going to listen, and they're going to lead with empathy. I sometimes have joked in the past where I provide counselor training, and I've been involved in some of the training, but over the course of my career, obviously, as I move on to different roles, I'm less involved in the training of the counselor. But I have to tell you, Sue, I really miss that. I miss the interaction. I miss being out there in the front lines, because I started as a counselor 28 years ago, and we have the saying, once a counselor, always a counselor. And I find myself, I just can't help it. I end up talking to folks, whether I'm on a flight or if I'm taking public transportation or I'm in a meeting. It doesn't matter where you're at. You end up getting involved and you want to help. But it really is as easy as just picking up the phone. And when I've provided training for counselors, I would always say to them, get past this formal aspect of what you're doing. Don't get into obviously we have compliance and we have rules and we have regulations and there's things we have to do for audit. It goes beyond that. I would ask people, how would you answer if you were at a family barbecue and somebody just walked up to you and said, hey, I have this bill that I haven't been able to pay, or if somebody has a conversation, how would you talk to your friend? Because that's really how the interactions need to happen. And what I want to say to folks is, don't make it more complicated than it is. It's already complicated. You're already juggling a million things, but it's nice to be able to reach out to someone that's going to be able to say, let's put this aside, let's handle this, let's handle that. And here's another thing too, Sue, that I say to folks all of the time. The situation that you're in was a set of circumstances. It's just unfortunate things happen to very good people. And we as a society, right, we try to carry everything. We say we can handle it and we're going to be okay. We're just that optimistic, but sometimes we all need a little help. And when you reach out to the counselor, the most important thing we get across is this didn't happen overnight. So it's not going to the cure isn't going to be overnight. It's not going to be solved in one counseling session. It's not going to be handled over one phone call. It's going to be a relationship that you're building, and you're actually adopting what we like to refer to as a financial coach for life. I'm here for you. What's it going to take if you have questions today, but something might come up 6 months from now, 9 months from now, 12 months from now? We're not going to get through this in one session. So it's going to be an ongoing process.
That's fabulous. When I was, if you will, in the trenches and doing training on a day-to-day basis and working with member service representatives, what you just said reminded me that one of the points I would make to a teller or to a member service rep is that when you are dealing with members, you know more about them than their best friend.
Right.
Quite often you're looking at my financials, you're looking at how much money I have saved, whether I'm bouncing checks, what my habits are, and we can't take that for granted. It's really a responsibility. So the financial counseling that you provide as an extension to what credit unions do gives people their own feeling of empowerment that they can take control. And I find that so important, especially when we're in an environment like today where so much is beyond our control. We're in a situation where we don't know what the unknowns are. So taking the basic steps, having a partner for life that's going to help you with financials, that's amazing.
And you make an excellent point, Sue, because if you think about it, credit unions, the tellers, the loan officers, they know more about your life in your family than most family members, right? Because simply put, it's still a taboo. It's something that we don't talk about. We're not gathering together during the holidays and no one's asking the question, all right, who's behind on their debt, or who has student loans, or who's worried about their mortgage payment. You don't have those conversations. So it is nice to be able to know you have someone you could reach out to. And it's great that credit unions are there for their members. And that should be the first place that they go to when a member has a question. They need to reach out to their credit union and ask the question and know that they have someone that is really looking out for their best interest.
That's absolutely right. And I was going to add that when you said they don't tell their best friend, and quite often, like my mother, she had a cookie jar, and money was being put in the cookie jar so that we would all have those little extras. So we don't always even tell the people closest to us. So that's great. So when you think about the issues that we're going to face now coming out of or continuing in the economic situation we're in today, what are you thinking that credit unions will be able to do to make a difference?
That I think that question is applicable to not just credit unions, but to balance, to any organization that's involved in this type of work. And what we need to talk about is, how do we make financial health a priority? How do we do this all of the time and not necessarily during a crisis? Because we're fantastic, we're phenomenal. When a crisis hits, we answer the call, we rally together, we try to figure out how do we get through this. But what we need to really work on, and the challenge that I think we need to all undertake, is how do we make this a long life commitment? How do we get to the point to where we're talking about financial health more from a proactive standpoint and not from a reactive standpoint, and feel comfortable to have those conversations and to be honest about those conversations and say, well, this is what my savings is and I would like to increase my savings. This is where my debt is at, and this is what I want to do when I pay down the debt. And why do I want to pay down my debt? Maybe it's because down the road I want to purchase a home and I want to go from renting to buying, or I want to get a place of my own. So these are conversations that we need to have, because I think coming out of this, we all want to be able to say, we survived and we did it and it's never going to happen again. But this is, again, coming, at least for myself, I've been in this industry when we were reeling with the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. And we were wondering, well, how do we, what do we do? How do we recover from that? What did we learn from it? So I would say, Sue, that would be what I think we need to do, or a challenge. How do we move to a point to where it's okay to talk about our financial footing and where we want to go and where we want to be?
Excellent. I want to go down a path just real briefly here that we haven't talked about, and that's the economic disparity of people of color. And when we think about the differences that we're dealing with today with our social issues, is there any tips that you have? I mean, you're dealing with a very diverse population, both in the Bay Area, where you're located, as well as across the country. Is there any thoughts there that you'd like to share?
I would share that one, there's no question that the impact there is definitely a financial inequality in how it's been impacted, and those that are being hit more. And I think a lot of the times we have to understand that the financial roadmap should be for all. There really isn't it's almost like it's a well-kept secret, and we need to think about, how do we make a difference? How do we go into communities underserved communities, vulnerable communities? Are we going out there and going, not just looking at the financial picture, but you have to look at the whole person. You have to look at everything. I mean, we talk about things like we take this holistic approach, but what does that really mean? You really have to take a step back and say, how are we going to make an impact? And let me share this. So Balance is a leader within the Financial Health Network. They recently reported, and this is across all segments here, 71% of Americans are either vulnerable or barely coping. So 29%, less than 30%, are financially healthy. We need to think about, how do we invert those numbers? How is it that such a large number is barely surviving? We need to figure out, how do we go from merely surviving to thriving? That's what we need to talk about. How do we get to that next level?
So Rico, I know that you're doing a pilot program in I think it's in downtown San Francisco, where you're going to have financial counseling in conjunction with the health organization. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have a program. We work with the San Francisco's Office of Financial Empowerment, and they have a program that we participate in. It's referred to as Smart Money Coaching. And the real impact of this program is, we took our coaches and actually are out in the community. We are actually at the sites. And the reason for doing that is, a lot of the times, if someone was looking for service, or they were already going to the Human Services Department, if they were already going to try to seek assistance within the city of San Francisco, instead of trying to make a referral and you ask someone to call this number, and if you have any questions about your debt, or if you have any financial questions, there's always a drop off. You're always going to lose that, whether the phone call is made, whether the appointment. And the difference here is, we actually have our coaches right at the site. So we're in the housing, we're in the neighborhoods, and for us, it's been a tremendous success, because now you're talking about, you can start having these conversations about building the financial wellness building blocks, and how do you start from the beginning. And I believe that we're making an impact, and we like to say that our mission is to go out there and interrupt generational poverty. But there's another step to that. Not only are we wanting to interrupt generational poverty, but how do we start moving the needle to create generational wealth? How do we start having those conversations? I sat in a meeting in San Francisco, and we had a resident in one of the programs where we were at, and she stood up and she talked about how awesome it was that she was the one referring people to our counselors. And she said she wanted to investigate the coaching herself. How could she make referrals if she wasn't fully aware of the activity? So she went and did a counseling session. And when she got up and spoke at this presentation, she talked about how impactful the coaching was, and that she wasn't embarrassed to say that, as a grandmother, not only did she ask her daughter to go to this coaching, she's now teaching her granddaughter about savings. And when I sat in the audience, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, we actually made an impact. And that's when I really started thinking about the work that we're doing, and the work that we've been doing is, we are really interrupting generational poverty. And I think a lot of the times we tend to forget, or we make a lot of assumptions. And I think it's about, again, coming back to the basics and taking it right from the beginning, and understanding, where are you, what's the goals that you're trying to accomplish, and be able to say to everyone, financial health is for all. This is not limited. Everyone should have the roadmap on how to become financially healthier and move towards generational wealth, and talk about retirement. That should not be an exclusive club.
Oh my goodness. I actually have chills. I just want you to know the whole idea that we can take steps that can change not only our lives, but future generations is so powerful. So, what 2 ideas into action do you want to say to our audience?
What are 2 ideas? One, if I could just follow up just a little with the whole person initiative that I'm talking about. You know, in the healthcare space, they talk about patient-centered medical home, where all of the services are provided and they're looking at the whole person. Well, I think one of the ideas that I would like to throw out is that we need to think about that, not just in the credit union space, but even in our very own organization, and think about that concept and turn it into a member-centered financial home where you have the financial health continuum of care, where we have wraparound services, where there's a safety net, where we're looking at everything. For example, someone might just be calling simply because they went to try to get a car loan. They weren't approved for their car loan. They're giving us a call, and that's what they're concentrating on. Well, what happened? Well, we need to peel it back a little bit. So was it your FICO score? And what might be in your credit report that's driving that FICO score down? Let's take it a step further and let's look at what the total debt is. Let's look at what your savings is. We need to really look at everything because there's so much that we can help, and not just necessarily, obviously the goal will eventually be you get that person that comes back, they're financially healthy, they're able to buy the car, but they're going to want more than that. They're going to want to purchase that car, and then later they're going to want to purchase that home, and they want to get to a point to where they are so financially secure. I used to teach money management classes, and I used to say to the audience in the class is that you should feel so comfortable about your loans that you should walk into your financial institution, you should walk into your credit union, apply for your loan, and tell them, I'll be back when the check is ready. You don't need to be sitting down in the lobby with your fingers crossed wondering what's going to appear on their account, or what are they going to see? Am I going to get the loan? What's going to be my interest rate? You should be fully aware of all of that before you go in. So for me, I think that one of the ideas that I would like to see is this concept of being able to look at the whole person. Let's evaluate everything, and let's not think about what's transactional today, but let's look at the long-term effect. Let's look down the road. Let's give ourselves permission to say, yes, I'm here, but where do I want to be financially 5 years from now and 10 years from now? And what are we doing to put those building blocks in place to ensure that they get there? The second one would be, and it's a little bit of what I talked about, interrupting generational poverty. I would love to put out a challenge and say to all of our credit union partners that are already partnering with us, and they're doing a phenomenal job, and I love working with our credit union partners because I love their mission and the work that everyone is doing. But can we do more? What else can we do to ensure? And here's the challenge, Sue. When the Financial Health Network goes out and they do another health pulse report, again, some of the numbers that I talked about, how awesome would it be if we could invert those numbers? Imagine if we can look back and say there was a time it was being reported that 70% of Americans were barely surviving financially. Imagine if we impacted that and we inverted the numbers, and we could stand tall and say that we made a difference, that when the report was done, we are now reflecting that 80% of Americans are actually financially thriving, not surviving, but thriving. To me, that's really what it's all about. And the numbers that I just talked about, again, not to overextend on that topic, this is pre-COVID. This was 2019 numbers. Can you imagine what the numbers are going to look like next year when the Financial Health Network does their report for 2020?
It's actually something that's not only worrisome, but a little scary. The one thing that I'm hoping is that quite possibly with the assistance, with the stimulus checks and so on, people have put that into some type of savings, or maybe it becomes the, the start of something if we get back to full employment. And that's the big question. I love the challenge. When I think about World Council and the fact that around the world, credit unions impact 257 million people. Okay, when you talk about the numbers you're talking about, and you're looking at what that looks like within the United States, I think quite often we don't equate the poverty levels that we have here in the United States. So I love the challenge that you stated. I think that it seems like a big problem, and it's something that's a little bit, if you will, intimidating. But if you start small and bite off the smaller pieces, and you're focused on the journey itself, as you said, it's a long-term solution. Balance, Balance is doing incredible work, and you know that your mission's important to me, and your people are important to me. You have that special ingredient, like you said, the secret sauce, and I think a lot of it is from a CEO that cares. Love how you care. So
thank you. Well, that's very kind of you to say, but it's again, it's an honor, and I was humbled with my appointment, because again, it's an organization and a mission that I've cared about, and I say almost half my life, 28 years. I'm often surprised when I'm doing an interview like this. That's the only time the number comes up. I tell people I have probably the most boring resume in the world. But it's a job and a mission that I love, and what I love about our team in Balance is we take this challenge, and that we know we're in this together. And Sue, I say the same thing about you, your organization, the work that you're doing, the underground, and all of the work that the credit unions are doing. We're super proud to be part of the credit union family.
Well, thank you very much. I think passion and purpose go hand in hand. And you may have been doing this for a while, but you certainly have the passion that probably just like you'd love to have every employee show up every day with that passion, Rico. So we value you as a partner. We love your time, and thank you very much. It's been great to see you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.